evening. This is the India Development Debate Direct. I'm Supriya Srinath, and we'll take it across to a very, very special guest then, because these are testing times for Chanda Kochhar, the Managing Director and CEO of ICICI Bank. With the role of her husband Deepak Kochhar in ICICI Bank sanctioning a mega loan to Videocon Industries making newspaper headlines, Chanda Kochhar finds herself in a spot of bother. On its part, the board of directors of the bank have thrown their weight behind Chanda, but with the CBI and regulators moving quickly to get to the bottom of the case, the ongoing issues are only getting tougher for her family. Interestingly, the allegations come at a time when public sector banks are facing a big credibility crisis after being caught clueless in the Nirav Modi scam. How strong are the charges against her? Is there any ground in the charges that are being made? Is there any failure on the part of the ICICI Bank as far as shareholder disclosures are concerned? Does this perhaps trigger the need for these kind of disclosures? Those crucial questions will be answered by our special guest this evening, none other than Mr. N. Vaghul, the former chairman of ICICI Bank and one of the founding members of that institution, who joins us right here on the India Development Debate Direct. Thanks very much, Mr. Vaghul, for sparing time and being with us. My first question, of course, has to do with the fact that as someone who's been involved with founding and building ICICI Bank to the institution where it is today, how do you review the recent developments around the entire controversy as far as Videocon is concerned and the CBI action that has followed?
With a sense of anguish and distress. That's a feeling I have.
Okay, feeling of distress and anguish, but are you, Mr. Vaghul, disappointed with the way that the board handled this entire issue? As the saying goes, when in doubt, disclose. Do you believe at one level the board should have proactively put out more information in the public domain, and were they found wanting there?
No, I thought they have done the right thing in making an inquiry and distributing the information. There could have been a genuine misunderstanding what the board statement really meant. For example, the people whom I talked to did not understand the phrase that it was a loan consolidation. It was a technical term they did not realize. I think two things are important. The issue relating to the bank should be differentiated from the issue relating to the propriety or otherwise of the Kochhar family. And as far as the bank is concerned, what the board said is correct. The loan has been sanctioned in the normal course, and all the disclosure norms have been taken into account, and they didn't see any quid pro quo, and there is no conflict of interest. And it is not a new loan, it is a accumulation of the loans which have been granted in the past, and it has been syndicated by the State Bank of India and has been subscribed to by the ICICI Bank. I mean, there is no new exposure of the ICICI Bank in respect of this loan. Given this fact, I don't know what else the bank's board can really say to the public.
Okay, so you believe that the bank board perhaps has done its bit because the loans were given in due order, but do you also believe that, and you alluded to this previously, do you believe the issue of the bank on one hand and the Kochhar family on the other are two very distinct, segregated issues, and they have been mixed, in common parlance, in perception and narrative, they're being treated as one case. But do you believe at one level the board is also treating it just like that?
No, I don't know. I mean, actually, what has happened is that because the allegation that has been made mixes these two, somehow or other, I think in the public mind also, it seems to be a single issue. Actually, there are two issues. One is the bank, ICICI Bank. Insofar as the ICICI Bank is concerned, the issue is in relation to the Videocon loan. The Videocon loan is not a fresh loan. It is not a loan which sanctioned in 2012. It may have been an accumulation of loans sanctioned in the past, which have been consolidated into a single loan, Videocon Industries plus about 10 or 12 subsidiaries. And the lead bank did this from the point of view of ensuring better security and perhaps better monitoring of the cash flow. And ICICI is one of the lenders of the 20 and odd consortium banks. And this loan was performing for a period of 5 years. And 2012 to 2017 there has been no default in respect of the loan. 2017 the loan has become bad, I mean in line with many loans which became bad around that time. And I think the normal process is there that it would have kicked in that insolvency and bankruptcy code. It would go there for a resolution. If it is not resolved, then it will go for a liquidation. And Venugopal Dut says that there are enough assets to cover the loan amount. So the bank may or may not take a haircut, but that's a different matter altogether. I don't think that the bank can be charged with any impropriety insofar as the loan is concerned, because it is a loan which has been coming into the bank's books for a long time. And let us not forget the fact that Mr. Dut had been the client of the ICICI Bank since 1985. He has been there for 33 years. It is not a new loan that has been given in 2018. He has been given a loan for a variety of purposes. Now, in regard to the Kochhars family, the letter says that Videocon invested money in Deepak Kochhar's new power, either directly or through that Supreme Energy. Dut has said, no, I have no relations with these people, and we don't know the story. And the bank's board, which seemed to have gone into the question, I have no details, I can only view it and as a public, just as you do and every member of the public does. The bank's board says they have gone into the question and they don't see any conflict of interest, they don't see any quid pro quo, they don't see any lack of disclosure of interest. Given these are the two conflicting things that have come, and so it is the CBI has gone into this matter and going into the preliminary inquiry. I think it is fair to say that we should wait for what CBI has to say in respect to the preliminary inquiry before we come to any conclusion on this matter.
No, I don't think we at ET now would like to jump to any conclusion. I think the CBI's inquiry should take its own course, and that is when the judgment will come in. And we don't want to hazard a guess or cast aspersions at this stage. You're absolutely right. But in some way, you are suggesting that this was an old loan, and that is the big differentiator. This isn't a new loan that has come in. This was an old loan. So in some ways, you're suggesting Ms. Kochhar didn't really have much influence on it. But in hindsight, do you believe, sir, and hindsight is always 20/20, I understand, do you believe she perhaps erred by not recusing herself from the loan decision committee, and perhaps she could have, and she erred perhaps in not disclosing her family's business interests in Videocon? Was that an error of judgment on her part?
There are two issues there. I know Mrs. Kochhar for the last 35 years, and last 25 years I was working with her, and she was in very key positions in ICICI. I can't just even imagine that she could have ever done anything wrong in respect of any matters concerning the bank. Now, in regard to the second issue, whether she should have disclosed this interest, if she believes, like what Venugopal Dut says, that Videocon has nothing to do with this whole transaction of the new power or Supreme Energy, and if she doesn't know about this transaction, what is there to disclose? If she believes in that, if she ought to have known, I mean, it all boils down to the question whether she knew about it. And if she knew about it, then is there an impropriety on her part? That issue has not come. I mean, that can come out only as a result of the preliminary inquiry conducted by the CBI.
Okay. Fair point indeed, Mr. Vaghul, but just to point out a little bit of a uncomfortable question here, because it's not just about Mr. Deepak Kochhar anymore. The stories have appeared in today's newspapers about fresh allegations that have been made against her regarding her brother-in-law, Mr. Rajiv Kochhar, and her daughter's father-in-law have also been floated in the media. In that sense, should conflict of interest perhaps be an issue that needs to be looked into, that needs to be debated upon at all?
No, but I think ICICI Bank has denied the whole thing, and Rajiv Kochhar also has denied it. But I think it is extending it a little too far, that Chanda Kochhar's brother-in-law was engaged in advisory services, and he has advised a whole lot of foreign firms, and he has himself come out with a statement that he has not much of an Indian connections. and he has not had any arrangements with any bank in respect of any of these things. It's all a question of whether you have to take an allegation as a fact and start working on that, or accept the people's statement on the face of it. I think that it's pushing it too far. How far into the extended family you can go and say that there has to be a connection between what Rajiv Kochhar has done with a host of industries. And if you really look at it, if anybody wants to do financial advisory services in India, he says that its services are fairly to the minimum, confined to few industries. It is very difficult to find a client who is not associated with ICICI Bank, because ICICI Bank had been a corporate client for a long time, and almost every corporate has connected with ICICI as a borrower. That's stretching it too far, that his brother-in-law was interested in it, and so Chanda Kochhar ought to have known about it. I think that I am not in a position to agree.
No, I think some part of what you say is right, that A, you cannot ask your family to stop working because you are heading one of India's premier banks and one of the largest lending institutions, and the other bit is, and you are right perhaps in saying that ICICI Bank will have very few corporate clients, very few corporates who do this sort of business and are not associated with ICICI Bank. But just on the board, sir, the board, it seems, was, did an inquiry very quickly, went through the documents and gave a clean sheet to the CEO, threw their weight behind this. But do you believe at one level they should have waited, or they should be open to an external inquiry at this stage? Do you think there's going to be one at all? Because many people say that banking is a business that's completely based on trust, and an external inquiry will perhaps augur well for ICICI Bank at this stage.
It has now become an academic issue, but they could have conducted an external inquiry, but they possibly felt that the issue was not such a complex issue where it is necessary to bring in an outside person. I don't know whether it would have made any difference if an external inquiry had been conducted. In any case, if the matter refers to the CBI, CBI is not going to keep quiet just because an external inquiry is conducted. So they would in any case investigate into the matter. Today this issue has become a little academic. What the board should have done and should not have done.
All right, that's an academic issue, what the board should and should not have done, and a CBI inquiry is underway. That's point well taken. But as somebody who's a founding chairman, as somebody who knows the bank, knows the fabric of this bank, what would your advice to the board and Ms. Kochhar be today? What would you have done if you were in her shoes at this point in time?
No, I don't know. You are asking a person who is not in complete command of the facts. I read the press, meet some people, I talk to them, and based on that it will be very imprudent on my part to come and think in terms of offering suggestions what the bank should do, what the board should do, what CEO should do. After all, if I want to make a suggestion, I have to be in full command of the facts of the case. I don't know about the facts. In fact, I ceased to be an executive chairman in 1996, that is nearly 22 years back. So I think it is too much for me to think in terms of offering any suggestions to the bank at this stage.
While many in the media are out there writing a quick obituary of Chanda Kochhar, I'm not going to make that mistake. She's come up the hard way. She's one of India's most successful businesswomen. But I will still ask you the question, as one of her mentors, as somebody who saw her come up the ladder and then achieve the success that she has, do you believe Chanda Kochhar needs to step down from her position for the time being and let an inquiry clear her before she resumes her role? In the interest of transparency, like many people are asking, I think it's only fair that I ask you this question.
No, but can you ask somebody to step down on the basis of an allegation? If you make an allegation against me, should I just clear out of the room and then disappear from the face of the earth? I think what is happening is there is a preliminary inquiry. CBI says that they are not coming to any conclusions in respect of the matter. Once the preliminary inquiry is concluded, they said that they will start an investigation after filing an FIR. That would be the stage I think this question will have to be asked of the bank's board. At the present stage, I think there is a verification process going on whether there is a prima facie case. And we have to claim the person who is charged with having invested, he says I have not done anything, and the other party also saying that we have absolutely no connection with the Videocon. In the light of that, I think we cannot come to a conclusion that somebody will have to step down just on the basis of allegations. The allegations will have to be supported by some proof. Then I think it's for the bank's board to react to it. I cannot give any advice in respect of this matter.
Fair point. This has to do with the bank's board. But while we are at the bank board, I think one of the questions also has to be about investor confidence. There's already been a run on the bank twice over. Do you believe an issue like this, a controversy like this, and I'm glad that you've spoken about how these are two different issues. The Kochhars as well as the ICICI Bank are two different issues. But do you believe this impacts investor confidence, and does that stand eroded?
That I think you have to. That's why I said that these two issues will have to be differentiated. What happens to the Kochhar family as a result of the CBI query is entirely different from, it is not going to make an impact on the ICICI Bank. If the Videocon debt has become bad in 2017, I am sure that ICICI Bank would have provided for it or would be providing as a measure, just like any other debt is concerned. So frankly, I don't think that ICICI Bank is anyway impacted as a result of this. Now, the culpability of Chanda Kochhar and Deepak Kochhar is an issue which is very distinct and different from that of what happens to the ICICI Bank. I don't think we should mix these two issues at all. And we should look, after all, ICICI Bank belongs to the public. ICICI Bank is in the public domain. We should be concerned more about the ICICI Bank. In regard to the culpability of that family, it is now that CBI has taken charge of the whole matter and they are conducting a preliminary inquiry, we should await the outcome of that inquiry and say what the facts are before we think in terms of what next to be done about it.
But Mr. Vaghul, does this entire incident and many other incidents in the past with both public and private sector banks, do these incidents trigger the need for better disclosure and corporate governance norms? And I'm really referring to disclosures in terms of conflict of interest, because the Companies Act or the Banking Act don't really mandate this. But do you believe these are the changes that are required and a review should be done? Does any of this trigger changes like these?
No, I don't think so. In fact, frankly, the corporate governance framework which the banks and companies have under the existing Corporate Act, the Companies Act and the Banking Regulation Act, and the regulatory supervision which the Reserve Bank of India has over the banks, I think is fairly adequate. Why fairly adequate? It is fully adequate and consistent with the international standards. I mean, every time an event like this takes place, you can't think in terms of modifying it and improving it and other things. There is no way in which you can improve the existing state of corporate governance. I mean, these incidents do take place from time to time, and you can't think in terms of modifying the whole system just because of these incidents. Frankly, I think I am quite satisfied with the way corporate governance is being handled by the bank under the overall guidance and the framework of the Reserve Bank of India. The Reserve Bank's regulatory supervision is very strict, and they have been very, very meticulous in the way in which they inspect the banks and look at the corporate governance as a separate issue. Frankly, I don't think anything more can be done about it.
Okay. While at regulatory supervision, I do want to ask you a direct question on the role of the RBI, because that's once again under the scanner. Many people are questioning it. The fact that the regulator's role is under question, and there is a lot of uncertainty around it for perhaps the right or the wrong reasons. Bank is a different thing, the family is another thing. But what should the regulator be doing right now? What is it that you expect the RBI to do at this stage to end the uncertainty, to end the drama that one is seeing unfold around ICICI Bank?
RBI would look into the matter. I am sure that they would like to look at how the bank board came to the conclusion that there has been no compromise. I mean, from the point of view of the asset quality, I don't think the Reserve Bank of India, its normal inspection machinery, would decide whether adequate provision has been made for the bad debt of the Videocon industry. But in regard to the corporate governance, I am sure that the Reserve Bank of India would look into this in greater detail in order to find out whether the bank's board had come to the conclusion on the basis of appropriate inquiries and they are satisfied with the way in which it has been done. I think that is the Reserve Bank's responsibility and they would do it insofar as the bank is concerned. In regard to any impropriety on the part of Kochhar or that due power or anything like that, I think they, like anybody else, would wait for the CBI's preliminary inquiry.
Mr. Vaghul, you've been a banker par excellence, and there are a lot of people out there who've already started saying that this incident perhaps puts a cap, or diminishes the need and raises a fresh debate on the need for PSU bank privatization, because private banks seem to have their own sets of issues and problems to deal with. How are you going to react to something like this?
No, there is nothing to do with the private sector bank, public sector bank controversy. I mean, I think to put it in the larger context, the rationale for private sector, public sector banks privatization stems from an entirely different set of factors. I think Urjit Patel made a statement that there cannot be duality of control, there has to be a single point control. See, we are confusing two issues, ownership and control. Nobody is quarreling who can own the bank. Public sector banks can be owned by the government, but who has to exercise the control over that? Should the Reserve Bank of India be in the controlling authority or the government be the controlling authority? That was the issue that was being talked about. The privatization issue is one of, if control functions are to be delegated to Reserve Bank of India, is it really necessary for the government to lock in funds in respect of the banks? After all, what is privatization? Privatization doesn't mean that you give it to some private industrial houses or anything like that. You are just listing it to the market, and then just like ICICI Bank or HDFC Bank, you have got 500,000 shareholders. That is the public holding. To call it a privatization is not correct, in the sense that it is the private sector, it is not government control. That's the issue. I don't think that these two issues need to be mixed up because of that.
So, Mr. Vaghul, before I let you go, and I know you have a flight to board there, does this issue and many others previously, whether it was Nirav Modi and all of that, raise questions on the fragility of our own banking sector? It was always believed that Indian banks are very ring-fenced from the volatility and the kind of issues that one sees and the fault lines that exist and plague banks in the developed markets. But does this expose our own fault lines as well?
I think the banking sector bank, public sector or private sector, see, the private sector, there are two sets of banks. One is the retail bank like HDFC, another is the corporate sector banks like Axis or ICICI Bank. The corporate sector banks, which have been having corporate lending, have been the victims of an economic vulnerability that has been taking place over the last decade or so. I am sure that we are going to see an upturn in respect of the banking, particularly with the coming into force of the insolvency and the bankruptcy code. I could see a very rapid decline in the non-performing assets, and a stage would come and the banking would resume. Whether it is public or private, that is not an issue. The issue is the health of the banking system and its ability to cater to the needs of the economy. I think the banking is in a sound state, and the stability of the banking is not in doubt at all. It is passing through a bad patch, but it will come out of it, and I suppose it will resume its normal journey pretty soon.
All right. On that very optimistic note from a veteran of India's banking sector, thanks very, very much, Mr. N. Vaghul, for joining us with your take, your perspective on what's really happening at ICICI Bank and India's banking space and how it stands today. Thanks very much, sir, for being with us. Mr. N. Vaghul there, the founding members and the founding pillars of ICICI Bank, essentially saying that the board could have perhaps asked for an inquiry, but the issues that plague the family of the Kochhars and the banks are two different things, and one must not jump to conclusions and cast aspersions at this stage unless the CBI does come across and come up with a very detailed inquiry. But thanks very much, viewers, for being with us. We'll see you on the other side of the other leg of the India development debate. Thanks very much.